The stories behind the stories with Mark Arnold, exclusively on The Geek Speak Show.
Hi, this is historian Mark Arnold with another installment of the Stories Behind the Stories. And today we're interviewing Joe Toricivia. And Joe is a writer and major comic book fan of the Disney Ducks and of DC superheroes. And he's had over 300 letters of comment published in various comic books published over the years, and has translated many latter-day foreign Disney Duck and Mouse stories into English, and prides himself on having written the final line of original dialogue for the final story, the final issue of Walt Disney's Comics and Stories. He also appeared on the Walt Disney's Treasures Chronological Donald, that's a mouthful, Volume 4 Collector's Tin, and writes a regular column and blog called The Issue at Hand, which he has authored for nearly 20 years. So, Joe, welcome to the show, and tell me a bit about yourself and how you became a comic book, TV, and movie fan.
Well, thank you, Mark, and I don't know, how does anybody become a fan of anything? I suspect it's different for everyone. Everyone has their own story. In my case, something about a particular comic or TV, show, film, whatever, just grabs you, and it never lets you go. Sometimes for decades, even longer. At least that's how it works with me. You know, whether it's Disney Comics, DC Comics, 60s TV, Humphrey Bogart movies, anything. It takes hold of you, and it just hangs on.
So with all this varied interest, what led you to become an expert on the Disney Ducks?
Well, it was probably that I didn't see the cartoons on TV very often in my childhood, and they became more real to me as comic book characters than as cartoon characters. And considering that Carl Barks was guiding those characters and other creators like Paul Murray, those comics in the 60s, they, as I said, grabbed hold of me. And, I didn't let them go until well into my upper teens when other things finally came along. But then they came back in my 20s. And have been there ever since.
To haunt you.
To haunt me, yeah.
So, your knowledge has led you to, translate some Disney Duck tales. And what is the process, and how do you do that to translate a Disney Duck tale?
Well, maybe I should explain that most of the Disney comic book stories that appear over the last 2-3 decades have been produced in Europe and have been translated and re-dialogued for the American audience. And that's where I come in. What I do is not write anything per se as much as receive the finished story with finished art and a very basic English translation that's either provided by the publisher or translated from a foreign language by the editor I'm working with. And with that, I create dialogue that will make it read well, I hope anyway, for the American audience.
Mm-hmm. Now, do you get to embellish it to, you put, your own slang and things like that? How much freedom do you have, I guess, is what I'm trying to ask.
Well, the freedom varies according to the editor and publisher, but okay. If you hire me to do it, the chances are you're going to get something well above and beyond what was originally on the printed page. For instance, consider a character like Ludwig von Drake, who has never really been properly characterized in comic books. He's been more interchangeable with the inventor Gyro Gearloose than the pompous know-it-all that we've seen on Walt Disney's Wonderful World of Color. So I had an opportunity to work with Ludwig von Drake in Walt Disney's Comics and Stories 718, and I took the opportunity to write what I thought would be the definitive comics version of the character. I made him bombastic, absent-minded, and his speech would often trail off into lower font digressions, not unlike the way Paul Frees used to voice the character in animation.
Mm-hmm.
And beyond that, it's basically characterization, look for logic issues. One very famous logic issue that I found was in the translation of an Italian story where Mickey Mouse and Uncle Scrooge and a bunch of the other characters went to Venice in search of a treasure. And when they got there, they were hailed as very well-known celebrities by everyone in town. And meanwhile, 70 years of American comic book continuity basically sets them up as ordinary folks. So what do I do with that? I didn't know. My answer, and the only way out of that corner I was painted into, because I had already started dialoguing this problem before that issue creeped up. So all of a sudden, I'm in a corner, and it's like, okay, how do I create a situation where they're known as celebrities? Well, thinking hard, I came up with the thought that they starred in a reality special. Not a series, just a special, which would be forgotten after a while, but was currently hot. And using writer's shorthand, I took the state of Calisota that those characters are supposed to have lived in and called it Calisota Shore. There wasn't anybody who didn't get that joke, and it served the purpose of making them temporary celebrities, and eventually that would be forgotten so that it's not a barnacle on future continuity. But all in all, it's great fun to do. I really enjoy it and hope I get the opportunity to do it in the future.
Mm-hmm. Just kind of totally shifting tone a little bit, just because I know your background and everything. What TV shows, movies, or comic books would you like to see reissued, or are you looking forward to in the next year?
Well, clearly, I would like what I call the core four Disney comic titles to return. The core four meaning Walt Disney's Comics and Stories, Mickey Mouse, Donald Duck, and Uncle Scrooge, the titles that we've had published more or less continually since the 40s and 50s. They unfortunately ceased publication in 2011. There have been no issues in 2012, and here we are in 2013, so let's hope the prospects look up for those.
Mm-hmm.
And TV shows, who knows? I'd love to see a resurgence of some of the old 60s sci-fi shows that I loved, like Voyage to the Bottom of the Sea, Lost in Space. Something like that done with just a little more of a modern edge, but maintaining the humor and the wonder that they used to have.
Very good. And then currently, what are you working on, or what do you like to read or watch nowadays?
Not working on a whole heck of a lot since those comic titles are not active.
Right.
Some very minor text pages for the Fantagraphics Mickey Mouse series, but let's just hope for those comics return.
Yeah, I agree. And in the meantime, where can we find, where can people contact you, or where can we see your work?
Well, I publish a blog that I update at least weekly, if not more often. It's called Joe Toricivia's The Issue at Hand blog, and that goes back to an APA and Fanzine column that I began in 1994. You can visit that at TIAHblog@blogspot.com, and I've always got something up there interesting right now. You can read about the upcoming Animaniacs DVD to be released next Tuesday. You'll always find something of interest there at least.
All right. Thank you very much, Joe, for joining us today. And,
Mark, it's been a pleasure.
Okay. And there's always a way to hear us on the Geek Speak show, or you can hear us on funideas.50webs.com. And this is Mark Arnold with the stories behind the stories.
You can hear the complete story behind the stories by going to funideas.50webs.com. That's 50webs.com. funideas.50webs.com. The stories behind the stories, exclusively on the Geek Speak show.